Okay, all right. Somebody's coming in already, so we'll see how it goes. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think my headphones died on me. So and then I couldn't get it. I tried to get it reset to the internal mic and speakers on the computer and it just wasn't cooperating. So could you guys hear each other?
Yes.
Looks like you were deep in conversation there.
We were all jealous of Jacob's fiber plan.
Oh, yeah, I would be too. Exactly. So, yeah, I'm not going to mess with these headphones right now. Yeah, like I said, the little the mute light would come on, but the green light wouldn't come on for the speakers and the mic.
Did you check the device manager?
Well,
Did you check the device manager first?
well, I think it was a physical problem if we're talking about the OSI model, because the light, you know how we say on a switch, the light doesn't come on. There's a little, yeah, there's a little with the headphones, there's a little pad that comes with it that has a green and red light. So the red light is when you're in mute and the green light is when it's go, and the green light was not coming on. So I don't know, maybe something happened. I'll troubleshoot them later.
It's not plugged into the microphone port?
Well, it's a USB one. So that's why I was trying different USB ports.
Aren't there two 3.5 sockets on there? One for microphone, one for headphone?
That's old school. This is a USB. A lot of modern stuff for computers now have USB microphones and headset.
So my modern Bose one.
Yeah, sorry.
Has one for each.
Okay, all right. Well, that's for high-end audio stuff. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. We're dealing with stuff that just is really good for speech, not for music and things like that.
Brian's a software guy. He doesn't really care about the hardware.
Well, it's nice that you're trying to help me along there.
Yeah, that's all I was trying to do.
I know.
I'm not boasting. I'm not bragging.
I'm just picking on you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We got some new folks here. Did I see Michael? Michael, you want to say hi to everyone? This is Michael Aranda.
Unmute, sorry. Hello.
Oh, yeah. Michael came in yesterday. I spoke with him. And he's on the 2-week assessment. So, so let's not pick on him.
Maximus.
And then we got Maximus. Showing up. And we confused Max with Jesus yesterday.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah. So
We did.
So does Jesus and Max, do you think they look a little alike or?
Well, I don't know. I've never met them. So, I mean, I was just going off what you said.
Well, you met Jesus yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And you see Max here, right? Max, say
I'm
hi.
sure which one Jesus is. I don't know if
Yeah, not all be met of Jesus, but
Maximus.
Jesus came back yesterday and I thought Jesus was Max, and so sorry for the confusion.
What's the topic for today?
What is the topic for today? We're gonna do a little more.
How's that?
We're gonna do a little more hardware today because tomorrow, what are we gonna do tomorrow?
More hardware.
No, tomorrow,
we're building computers, right?
building computers. So tomorrow afternoon, George, are you here somewhere?
Yeah, I'm here, Brian.
Okay, so what did you do for everybody, George?
I broke it down to where the mobile's at, where you guys have to actually put it into the actual case, make sure the RAM works, hard drives, fans.
Okay, and did you set any booby? You didn't set any booby traps for them or anything, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to
Promise,
figure out their own cabling.
Yeah.
He's not
Okay,
going to
so
tell you.
So
Did
he
you
set
take
up,
out the brass standoffs? Did you make it really
You'll have
evil?
to find out, yeah. He
That's for you to
cross-threaded
find out.
any of them. So anyway,
Yeah,
we
that kind
got,
of sucks because I'm not going to be able to make it. My family's coming from Canada.
who is that? Is that Max? Who
Really
just
sucks.
said that?
Yeah.
Max, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. If you can't make it, you can't make it. Mhm. So,
Are we allowed to install any OS we see fit tomorrow on the computers, or does it have to be Windows?
Windows 10.
What do you
Professional
think? What do you
Edition.
think, George?
It's up to them if they can get it boot.
Yeah,
It
well, as
works
long
with
as you got all
OS on
the,
it.
I think as long as
Don't
you got
you
all the
worry.
driver support.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just said it need to be running with an operating system. I don't think we specified which one.
Excellent.
I think I'm gonna.
Make
gonna
it
do
hard
a
on
Logan.
Jacob. So make it hard on everybody. Make Windows users install Linux and make Linux users install Windows.
Oh, that'd be adding a rule after the fact.
I could do either.
All right, okay.
Complicate this big time.
Windows 11 then.
Windows 11
Brian,
Yeah,
settled.
would you be able to answer some questions of mine?
sure. Go ahead.
After the at the end of the class, I'm having trouble with the we call it the command line interface things.
Yeah,
Just
we
after this conversation.
we can definitely go over that.
All
Yeah.
right, wonderful.
Yeah.
We should do some refresher on command. It's been a while since we talked about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just starting with that. It's
Yeah.
just it's new to me actually.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't have a DOS. Actually, I could set up a DOS VM real quick. So yeah, that's no problem. So we can do that. Anyway, so let's take a quick, well, not a quick look. Let's take a look at the hardware that we have for tomorrow. So let me share that. So the computer behaves itself today.
You know, that's good that we're working hardware level because that's actually plays into kind of the problems that I was having. Because like, if I can understand, because I don't understand all the layers of the computer, if I can understand hardware, okay, hardware, then firmware, then kernel, and then application, user software, and then on top of that, it's the so if I can just so if this is actually perfect that we're doing from hardware to OS. It's perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll do a little bit of
I
hardware in
think the way we have
preparation
it
for
set up
tomorrow.
right now is you do core 2 first, which is more the OS, and then later on you do hardware. Just for reference, Max. Like there's a syllabus, bro.
Just go with the flow. Don't jump the gun.
All right, good advice there.
There's a syllabus.
So, all right, let me share the screen. I think this is the screen. That's the one, and I just had the Google Drive open. I forget who was asking that. Max, do you know how to get to the Google Drive? Oh, ask him when he comes back. But everybody remembers that you can come here and get all of the ISOs.
Yes.
So in here, I think Rafi put the Windows 11 ISO in here somewhere, right?
It's in Canvas for sure. I wasn't able to look for it in there. I don't know
Okay.
how, if it was linked
Yeah,
differently.
he
or
linked
something.
it through Canvas, so maybe it's not in here, or maybe it's somewhere that I don't know. But anyway, there is a link in the announcements in Canvas for it, so you can get to it through there. In fact, let's go over to the links in Canvas and find that out. So I'm going to go to the dashboard for a moment. Which one should I go? On that one. Okay, so if I click on announcements, and like, so there is he did put an announcement in here. Here is the link. And by the way, this is the one that Derek made. So, okay, it's somewhere in the Google Drive, but anyway, that link will take you to it. Okay, so if you're gonna play with it. And speaking of which, open up my VM while we're talking here. Off right in a minute.
And works good if you install it in VirtualBox and let's make sure that it's set to Windows 10,
Mhm.
not Windows 7, because it defaults to Windows 7 when you try to install it in VirtualBox. If you'll see what I mean when it's, when it names your operating system. But you could stick with the default parameters in that regard and just move forward through the installation process, and it should work fine.
Mhm.
That just using the ISO that Rafi gave us without making any like adjustments.
What's that?
Were you just using the ISO that Rafi gave you? When you did
Actually,
that?
I was using.
That was the one Derek actually made.
Using the one I gave him.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay,
And
okay.
then Rafi shared it with everybody.
Yeah,
Right on, right on.
but it works. I mean, anybody could have generated the ISO. I just happened to do it.
So yeah, if there's a problem with it, blame Derek, right?
Yeah, because I was having a hard time last night getting it to run, but I'm using a MacBook, so it might be a little bit different.
Who is this?
That's
Joaquin.
Joaquin. Yeah, you're trying to run it on Mac, right?
Well, the
sir.
fault probably is not the Mac. The fault-
VM though, right?
But you can run it in parallels, can't you?
Yeah, the fault is VirtualBox is not quite as stable on the Mac as it is on the PC.
Yeah,
Okay.
look it up online. I think there's a walkthrough on how to get Windows 11 up and running on Parallels.
I think you can probably download a trial of Parallels that will last you a month or so.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is this? What is Parallel?
Parallels is virtualization software for the Mac.
Ah, okay. See, and I just been using VirtualBox.
That's
Parallel
the
works
name
very
of
well.
that's the name of the virtual the VM.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing
No
on
worries.
Mac is free, bro.
Yeah, nothing
Yeah,
on
that's
Mac
for
that you
sure.
find
That's
out is
part of,
free.
it's like joining Scientology. In
Right.
order to get to the next level, you have to pay.
Oh, that was a good way of putting it.
In order to get to the next level, you have to pay more.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
gonna download this free trial right now.
Yeah.
See how it
Yeah,
goes.
that's what I think about Apple people. I'm sorry, all you Apple users out there. Yeah, George, I see you on the iPhone.
Oh, I'm picking on George now.
Hey, that's
I'm
fine.
sorry,
Hey,
bro. I'm sorry.
It works.
You know what, bro?
works.
I hate iPhone users. I hate the whole minutia of iPhone.
Yeah, but they do work.
Man.
And
That's the problem is they work.
yeah,
No, the problem is that you can get a PC to work like way better for half the price.
Oh no, that I can't disagree with. That's why I'd
Okay,
rather
there you
work
go.
on
There,
PCs. No, that I can't disagree with. If you're gonna game, there's no way you're gonna.
okay.
do it on
There's
the
Windows.
Apple.
There's Windows 11 showing up right now.
There you go.
There's that Mac clone showing up right now.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Okay, so anyway, here it is. So if you guys had tried to get that copy to work, it does work. So here's proof of it right here.
Does work. Yeah, great. Don't be afraid.
And eventually that special start menu will show up.
Sometimes you may have to, check your installation, make sure it looks right. I mean, it just gotta make sense, Maybe that's what we should do is walk them through installing it in virtual. That way they could take notes on making sure that they install it properly, because there is some confusion.
Right. You know what? It took a long time. So what I did do a few screenshots of it, but I didn't do a lot. But let me go into the pictures and just show you some of the things that I saw on it. Unfortunately, I only did a couple. But here's one of the things that are. I'm gonna get a faster computer for here to do the Zoom.
You can fix those two all-in-ones we got sitting over there and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I gotta fix those all in ones. I will. I'll do them next week after progress reports. Well, this is annoying.
We'll make it.
This computer doesn't like to do 3 things at once.
Yeah, what is it, an i5?
No, there's something about opening pictures in Windows 10 that I don't know if it's scanning the file or something, but it does take a while. Every single PC that I tried to load up a picture in does that.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so this is part of the setup where it tries to coax you into using the cloud features. So it wants to integrate itself, automatically store my files in OneDrive. And I know a lot of you don't like using the cloud account, but it's not a bad idea, because what happens, our hard drive crashes, right? And then we wish we had a file stored in another location. Of course, this is going to be part of Microsoft's Microsoft 365, where they're going to try and get you to pay $99 a year for additional storage and a few other things. But I think that's the way of the
I
future.
agree with you. If we're in a business environment, that's definitely the way to go. But I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
Home PC. I don't know. I don't know. I'd rather set up backups. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, I think you brought up
I'd
a
rather
good
plug
point,
a hard
Brian,
drive into my router and back.
I think you brought up a good point the other day, Brian, about, even though we may not like it, we still need to learn it. At
No,
least
exactly. Because in business environment, definitely we're going to have to implement.
Yeah.
and for your home account, keep in mind, you can just create a throwaway Outlook.com account, just to try this out, especially if you're trying it out in a virtual. So you can just create a temporary email address to do that. So that is a possibility. Otherwise, you're not gonna get to play with all the features. And keep in mind, since about Windows 8 and on, operating systems have become more and more focused on the cloud. And we're going to see that even more with the whole upcoming Microsoft 365. It's going from Office 365 now to Microsoft 365. So they're not going to just take the Office components now and sell you that. They're going to sell you a whole system, including the operating system and so forth, that will be on the cloud.
You're also going to run into people that swear by the cloud, and some people that just completely hate the cloud.
People swear at the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, you got to learn it. So learn it for sure.
Right.
No, you do definitely. I'm just saying.
Yeah, keep in
when
mind.
you give somebody your data, I don't know. There's a third party involved.
Yeah, keep in mind, in a corporate world, you're probably going to want to use the cloud to store some of your things. But of course, like you said, you got to go through a trusted vendor. Somebody that's not going to give away your data as well. So that becomes a big issue.
There's only one person I trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
Yourself. Yeah. All right. So anyway, but we're seeing more and more of this, and a lot of our data is going out to Amazon Web Services anyhow. I mean, it's hard to avoid it. I'm sure we've all put some information on the cloud about ourselves. So I mean, it's
Facebook,
you just have to have a cell phone, right, to do that. So anyway, so that was one of the things. It gives you the option to store locally. So right here, store locally automatically.
Bless you.
In OneDrive. Also, I didn't make a screenshot, but another thing they're trying to get you to use is Microsoft Teams. That seems to be a big push with Windows 11, which kind of shows that Microsoft was kind of behind the curve on that.
Just
a lot of, I don't know. I know the city of Thousand Oaks is using it.
Yeah.
A lot of corporate.
But I think they're playing catch up because Teams has been around a long time. You would think it would be the dominant video.
I think over the last year and a half, when remote working really became prevalent in like video conference, I think they really started to take more of an interest in that software. Even Zoom had the same type of experiments. Zoom wasn't really, it was kind of trivial, and then the
Right,
pandemic.
and Zoom came along at
and
the
then
right,
they took off.
right, they just happened to come around at the right time, at the right place. Okay, so here's the thing where they're pushing Microsoft, notice they call it Microsoft 365 now, not Office 365.
Right.
So even though here they're talking about paying the $99 a year for Office apps and so forth, and cloud storage, it seems that they're going to actually have the option to put your operating system out on the cloud as well, so that you could run from the best of what I can tell, so that you could run your operating system from your iPad as well, or your iPhone or your Android phone or other
This is
device,
their push-
from
this is
another
their push
laptop.
To go on the, to
Mhm.
go south, to go mobile.
So it looks like it's going to be a virtual desktop type interface. Yeah, Derek?
Some corporations won't allow you to use anything but the software that they want you to use. So some corporations will make you use Microsoft Teams or Skype or whatever they call it at the time, and not allow you to use anything else.
Yeah, that's a fair thing. And you guys as IT people may be the one making that decision as well. Keep in mind that that decision in the corporate often comes from the input from the IT people. And it may be that you just want to stay with one product, because you may not want to have to try and secure multiple products. Because remember when Zoom first came about, we had the Zoom bombing, and they didn't have full encryption on their video. And that happened over time because users started complaining about that. So, and that was when other products like Skype and Teams, said, hey, we do that already. So, so yeah, there are many times good reasons for companies to be conservative, but otherwise you can get crazy where different people are using different things, and you don't have, you kind of can lose control over it.
Better to remain open-minded and learn about all the new software that comes out.
Okay, so I said we would go over some questions, so I just wanted just to show you that Windows 11, that ISO will run in VirtualBox. All right, so let's start with this one. Maybe we'll eventually get this done. We're resuming back on the test. I think we did a little bit of this last time, as I recall. All right, Jason has returned to his office after vacation and is attempting to access diontraining.com. He receives an error that he cannot connect to the website. He then tries to connect to the company's local internet server. I think we did this question before, but it's good to review it. Connecting without any issues. Next, he pings the IP address of diontraining.com and gets successful connection. Finally, he tries to ping diontraining.com by domain name and then receives an error. Which of the following commands should Jason enter next to resolve the issue? And obviously we did
not to release and renew because it was able to connect to the computer next to it, but wasn't able to connect to the domain name. Therefore, it was going to be a DNS issue.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a DNS. Yeah. So this was a red flag right away. This should, as we read that, it should pop up in your mind right away that he can ping by IP address, but he cannot ping by name. So immediately that is a DNS issue. Either the machine doesn't know the DNS address, or it's got the wrong DNS address, or something of that nature. So the thing is, he's been gone for a while. So obviously his IP address is stale or something that sort of implies that. So what are we going with as far as the
DNS or flush DNS? Now, Brian, question: if it wasn't connecting at all, if you were pinging and it wasn't connecting to the internet at all, then is that when you would do a release and renew? In what situation would you do?
Well, I think if it wasn't connecting at all, most likely thing that would somebody unplug the switch. or somebody
Right,
pulled the
right,
wire. So
physically.
that's the most likely thing we see happen when you just can't ping. Because the release and renew typically is going to get an IP address, right? Because the lease expires and it renews automatically. And even if he was away on vacation, turned his computer on, when he turns his computer on, it's going to ask for an IP address from the DHCP server. So more likely a switch that's turned off, a wire that's unplugged, or a DNS server that's not working, but that would affect everyone.
Gotcha.
It pings IP address, gets it successful. Okay, so the DNS cache could be stale, right? So you could flush the DNS cache so that it updates it with new DNS information. Or he could, see, I think on this one, I would ignore the release and renew just because both of them should essentially do the same thing.
Right.
Flush the end,
That's, I think, why we would go with
flush the toilet.
flush. Mhm. Okay. But that is a handy command to use every once in a while. Every once in a while, I do find the DNS flush. And so
And IP config all, that's gonna give you all the
that will give you
like-
all of the information.
gateway
And-
information, IP
And really, the
addresses.
only thing we would find here that we would be looking for is if it's got an incorrect DNS server address. I'm not sure why, given the scenario, why it would have the wrong one. But here, maybe the address change on the server and it's the DNS information is stale. So we just have to invent a scenario that would apply to.
Right.
All right. All right, you are troubleshooting a computer that will not boot. After gathering information from the client about the symptoms they have experienced, you believe the power supply may be faulty. You used a power supply test to determine if the power supply provides the right amount of output voltage and has determined the power supply is only providing 50% of the voltage that it's supposed to provide to the workstation. What is the next step you should perform according to the CompTIA troubleshooting methodology?
What's the last answer?
But what is the last answer? Establish a theory of probable cause? Question the obvious.
Establish a plan of action to resolve the problem and then implement the solution.
Exactly.
Okay,
I
all
concur.
righty. So yeah, it sounds like it needs a new power supply, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or maybe a more powerful one, because let's say this is only, a 300 watt power supply and you stick in a high-end video card, what's going to happen?
You're gonna need more.
Power supply.
You're gonna need more water.
Would it turn off because it's using consuming more resources?
Well, yeah, it could, depending on the design of the power supply. What could happen is that you're drawing so much power that the voltage is gonna drop because the power supply cannot provide enough power. So sometimes on cheaper power supplies, you just start pulling the voltage down. And remember, things are within tolerance. Something 12 volts should be somewhere around 12 volts, maybe at least 11.5 volts. But if you start pulling so much power that drops down to 10 volts, then that voltage is going to be too low. Now, some power supplies, as you say, may shut down or do other things depending on the circuitry within them. But probably just a cheap one, or the voltage is just going to start lowering because you're pulling too much power.
If the voltage drops, is it possible to damage the hardware piece?
Well, the one that would concern me the most would be the hard drive, because the hard drive's got to spin at a certain RPM. I would tend to think that other things would be less likely to be damaged, but mechanical things like a hard drive, if it doesn't spin correctly, remember the head's got to float over the disk.
Gotcha.
All right. You're traveling to Thailand on a business trip. Your laptop.
Nope.
Nope. Okay, no, you're not. Okay, you're traveling to Hawaii on a business trip.
Oh,
No, okay. You're traveling to Fiji on a business trip. Your laptop touchscreen display is visibly flickering when you plug into a power outlet at a local coffee shop. You take your laptop to the hotel room and you notice it doesn't flicker when plugged in there. Which of the following is the most likely cause of the issue?
I want to say that it's because it's in a foreign country. It's
Yeah, I think there's
different
I think
voltage.
this is a give
I
me.
think it's, especially if it's Thailand, it has to be A, because they're notorious for their electricity shutting off at random times. Like,
Oh, so this is why they picked Thailand.
Yeah.
Yeah, picked on Thailand.
I'm with A as well.
Yeah, yeah,
I kind of think that is what it is too.
yeah,
But we're not gonna know till then. Yeah.
So yeah,
Sounds good.
they're not getting clean power coming to their power supply, and it's causing problems. Like we were saying before with the power supply, if the power supply was dropping in voltage, that's not good enough power supply. But if the power supply is not given good voltage coming into it, no matter how good the power supply is, that you could end up having issues as well.
But this is a wait. This is a laptop, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, it's I mean, the battery is getting charged, and the laptop is being powered by the battery, not the direct power supply, right?
Okay, this is a laptop with a dead battery. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I forgot to mention that. All right. A client, yeah, sometimes we have to envision we have to add elements to their story. A client
Okay, I got it.
reports that their workstation is continually crashing when using certain applications on the Windows system. The system will stop working and display a blue screen of death error on the screen. Which of the following is a likely cause of the blue screen of death?
Memory. Failure of corruption of the memory.
Yeah, it's typically memory that will cause you the blue screen of death. You just installed an SSD in the laptop to increase the storage speed of the device. Which of the following should you configure to increase the lifespan of the newly installed SSD?
Disable regular
Disable,
scheduled
right.
defrag of the SSD.
Yep.
You can't be doing that in the first place.
No.
You can't actually, I don't think you can actually do it, but yeah, but for the sake of these questions, they just want to point out, as a chance to point out, we've mentioned it many times, right? You don't want to do
Defragging.
You don't want to do unnecessary things on a solid state drive because it just is unnecessary wear. So the more you do on an SSD, the more wear and the life of it gets shortened a little bit. All right. You work as a computer technician for a production company that travels worldwide while filming and editing music videos. Due to the nature of video editing, you will be building a video production studio for the company that will have maximum amount of RAM, an 8-core CPU, a dedicated GPU, and a redundant array of solid-state drives. You are now determining which power supply to install in the system. What is the most important characteristic you would consider when choosing the power supply? Okay, they're building a pretty high-end computer by the sound of it.
12-volt rail.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the 12-volt rail
12-volt
probably.
rail.
Yeah.
With all the prehensiles they're adding on, those are all 12 volts. So yeah.
Yeah, so really what that's saying is, this is a 600, 800,000 watt power supply rather than be a 250, 300 watt. So if it can deliver the amperage on the 12-volt rail, it's got to be putting, it's got to be a high wattage rated power supply, right?
Right.
Okay, you have been asked by Dion Training to build a specialized computer that will be used exclusively as a gaming machine for beta testing some new video games. Oh, that sounds like a good job, right? They're developing. Which of the following should you install to best meet the company's needs? Okay, how many?
Dedicated video
Four.
card.
Okay, obviously a
cooling.
dedicated video card. Would we want liquid cooling?
I mean, liquid cooling. Right?
Uh,
What else is there? Okay,
Do
Nope.
the Dolby sound card.
the what?
The Dolby,
Dolby sound card definitely, because we would want to be
sound card,
testing
yep. CPU
graphics
with
and sound.
integrated GPU.
Yeah. Well, actually, maybe
You probably want the SSD more.
Is there another one?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, dedicated.
Is there another one down there? No.
No, that is it.
It only says 4.
Says 4.
I just wanted to see what the choices were.
Okay,
I mean,
fair
yeah,
enough.
the SSD over the HDD, I agree, definitely. But so the CPU with integrated GPU versus dedicated video card with GPU. What's
Okay,
the difference
if
there?
you want a high-end gaming experience, you're going to choose a dedicated video card, right, over a
Integrated, right?
one.
Okay.
Integrated ones are typically when you're going to get lower-end machines or laptops.
But wouldn't you
Gotcha,
also
gotcha.
want to test the game on a low
I
end?
know. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Depending, are they talking about?
It says the best though. It has best capitalized.
But I see what so what it's talking about is what is considered the best when you're a tester. If this said you're best as a gamer, then yeah, you wouldn't want CPU with integrated. But I think we're overthinking the question.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. I agree with the
I agree.
for.
Yeah, I think we just got to go as if they're asking you're a gamer and you want the best experience, and this would be it, right?
Yes.
Okay, your company's printer is displaying an error of replace cartridge 1, filament is empty. Based on this error, what kind of printer is your company using?
3D.
No, I think it's
Oh, wait, you said filament empty?
inkjet.
Filament, which one uses a filament?
3D printers.
3D printers, right? So it's like a long, thin, like thread. That
Oh,
it's
okay.
a filament. It's like a PVC or some different types of plastic, depending what your design you intended on.
Gotcha.
So yeah, filament would be a 3D printer. Toner would have been a laser printer.
Laser.
You are attempting to install a full-size PCIe network interface card into a 1U server, but it's too tall to fit in the machine. Which of the following do you need to install first in order to install the full-size PCIe network card in the server?
Riser?
A what?
Would it be
A
a riser?
riser
Would
card.
that allow it to be installed
because
horizontally?
Yeah, because the server is only going to be about this thick, right? And it's not thick enough to put in a full-size network card. So you got to turn it over on the side. So to do that, you put in the riser card so you can plug the network card in essentially sideways. Make sense?
No, but yeah.
It's so you can tip the network card 90 degrees.
No, it makes sense.
Okay.
It would cause excessive, I think it would cause more heat.
Yeah, well, I mean, but when you see those, we have a bunch of one RU servers, and they have really high-speed fans in the back to make up for the fact that
Yeah, they're built in.
yeah. So
They're
yeah,
really heavy. Those ones.
Yeah, they do have a bunch of fans in the back, and they're usually pretty loud because of the potential heat issue. You have been asked to replace the processor in a workstation. You remove the old processor, you install the new processor into the motherboard slot, attach the heatsink, and attempt to power on the workstation. The workstation boots up, but after a minute or two, the computer shuts itself down, which of the following steps did you most likely forget to perform?
Thermal paste.
Thermal paste, right. Okay, so you understand the CPU just gets too hot, and what happens when it gets too hot, your computer just shuts down. So yeah, that would be the thermal paste.
And that would be like a preventative measure?
No, that's what you're actually supposed to do when you build a computer. You're supposed to put thermal paste between the heat sink and the CPU to make sure they have proper contact, so you have proper thermal conductivity between them.
Right, I understand that, but does it automatically shut off if it detects that?
Yeah, well,
So
yeah.
what's going to happen is it's
it
going to
will,
overheat
yeah,
and it's going to turn off.
Yeah, it is a thermal overload, so typically they will shut down, yeah, as to prevent damage.
Not right away though, Mike. It's got to heat up first.
Usually you get key sinks with thermal paste pre-applied, but yeah, some of them don't. It's
Mm-hmm.
always good.
What about a thermal pad in place of like thermal paste? Like, what if you got like a really nice high quality thermal pad? Would that do just as good of a job?
What do you, I'm not sure what you mean by thermal pad.
Like, you know how like on the Raspberry Pi heat sinks, you get, sometimes they have the little blue like thermal pads that you
You
take
talking
off.
about the one that's pre-applied?
They're
You know
not like, you can buy it like a sheet of it and you can cut
Oh
them.
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Oh,
mine
no.
wasn't pre-applied. I had to put mine on there myself as well.
What is
No.
like an adhesive pad?
No, I wouldn't use a thermal,
Exactly.
I would not use a thermal pad on a CPU.
Because it's too thick and it would.
Yeah,
probably-
I think it's okay on a Raspberry Pi because you're not dealing with
They're
a lot of
small.
Yeah.
But I
They're
would
not
not,
producing the amount of heat as a full size.
yeah, but I wouldn't,
I've never been brave enough to test it, so I just figured I'd ask.
yeah, no, I wouldn't, that's fine on a Raspberry Pi, because on a Raspberry Pi, you can get away without even having a heat sink. You just lose a tiny bit of performance, but on a CPU, it's a little different. You do need to draw that heat away. You are troubleshooting a memory issue on a customer's laptop and have determined that the memory module needs to be replaced. You walk into the storage room and select a memory module to use as a replacement. Which of the following choices would you most likely choose for a laptop?
Sodium.
Sodium, yeah. So a small outline DIMM. What is ECC used for?
Mac Pros.
Error checking component.
Servers for error checking.
Maybe on some high-end Macs, but they're typically used on servers, yeah. DDR4 is your typical desktop, right? The current generation of desktops would use DDR4 memory, and single channel is just single channel. We talk about this when you put the memory into a desktop, whether it runs in single channel mode or dual channel. And if it can run in dual channel, that's the best situation. And that will take at least 2 memory modules to be able to run in dual channel. You are configuring a new server for a client. The client has purchased 5 1 terabyte drives and would like the server storage to provide redundancy and double fault tolerance. Which of the following configurations would best meet the client's requirements? It says double fault tolerance, okay?
So it's more than 2 drives?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be a RAID 5 configuration?
No, RAID 5, you can only lose 1. I think in some instances in a RAID 10, you could lose more than 1. The most common one I use for double fault would be RAID 6, where you have an additional hard drive that's striped so that you can lose 2 drives. These are striped and mirrored, so you could potentially lose 2. I think it would depend on which 2 you lost. If you lost 1 in each stripe, I think you'd be out of luck. But if you lost them both in one of the mirrored stripes, I think you'd be okay. But anyway, the other ones wouldn't work. The other ones wouldn't work at all. So if you lose more than 1 on these ones,
No, it's RAID 10.
Okay, and this one, RAID 0 would provide you no fault tolerance, right?
No, it's just expanding your.
This one is for speed, if you're a gamer or something like that and you want speed. By striping the drives, it gives you more speed, but it gives you no fault tolerance because if any of those drives fail, you lose everything. RAID 1 gives you fault tolerance. What is RAID 1 called? What do we
Mirroring.
call it?
Mirroring?
Mirroring. So if one of the drives in the mirror fails, the other one will take over. So you don't lose anything with that. RAID 5, of course, is striping with parity. So you have them striped like RAID 1, but the difference is now you have an additional drive for parity information, which if a drive fails, it can use the parity information to rebuild any lost data.
In order to create a RAID 5, you need 3 drives, right?
Yeah, you need 3 drives, exactly. With a RAID 10, you need 4 drives. Okay. Okay, you have been asked by Dion Training to build a network attached storage device that would be used exclusively as a file server for the company's internal network. Which of the following should you install to best meet the company's needs? Choose 2.
What's the bottom one?
Oh, let's see what the bottom one is.
I want to say RAID 5 and 1 terabyte SSD.
Maybe. Let's see what we- Okay.
Fast Ethernet.
Yeah, I was thinking fast Ethernet and something else.
Well, if we're going to say fast, when we go to gigabit?
We get.
Yeah.
Okay, remember the importance of a NAS is to provide data to users over the network. So they're all going to connect to these hard drives that are attached directly to the network. So yeah, I think the Ethernet card is going to be probably really important.
Oh, because it would support any speed under that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it would support any speed under that as well. Exactly. So the fastest NIC we can have on a NAS, that would be good. So the other ones are going to be a little more debatable. What we would have.
HDD would be cheaper than a SSD.
Right. So
for
which of the following should you install to best? So what are the company's needs? You're using that will be used exclusively as a file server.
The company's internal network.
RAID 5.
I'm thinking RAID 5 too.
I'm thinking of RAID 5. It's always a good idea to have fault tolerance. So if they're dependent on this, we don't want to lose it, right?
Right.
So it's good to have. Well, you can have backup definitely, but remember with RAID 5, you have a hardware failure. You don't have to worry about your backup because you're going to replace the drive. Even with RAID 5, you want to. With RAID 5, you ideally want to do a backup as well. But the thing with RAID 5, if the drive fails, you don't have any downtime.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to lose your QoS.
Right. You don't have to rebuild things. You just have to stick it in another drive to replace the drive. So it's basically on the fly where the users are not going to see interruption there. Where with a backup, if it fails, they can't get back to the data until the backup is restored. So, but when is it, even with RAID 5, when is it useful to have a backup?
When they all fail?
Well, yeah, that would definitely be one thing.
If all 3 of the drives fail, that's catastrophic, but yeah.
And that does happen sometimes. I've had RAID where I've had more than one fail, which is annoying. And but
I mean, if more than one drive fails on a RAID 5 is, if one drive is still good, is it,
no, you can only have one of them fail. If you have more than one fail. If you have RAID 6, you can have 2 of them fail. But with RAID 5, you can only have one fail. But
even though there's a RAID 6, there's a RAID 6, Brian. Jeez.
Yeah, RAID 6 is pretty common. We use it on a number of our servers. Mhm. So even though the book doesn't mention it that much, RAID 6 is getting fairly common. So one thing RAID, people forget RAID doesn't protect you from is if you had the thing like the encryption where they have the blackmail thing, they encrypt all of your data. The RAID doesn't help you from that. If you have a virus or something like that, or a user goes and deletes some files accidentally from the NAS, see, the RAID is not going to protect you from that. So ideally, you still need a backup even when you have RAID 5 or RAID 6 or RAID 10.
For ransomware and
Or ransom, yeah,
user error.
where exactly. So we need backups to protect from that. You have been asked to install a network cable to run a television signal between two buildings. Which of the following cable types should you choose?
Coaxial.
Which one?
Coaxial
Yeah, coaxial cable for that.
for television.
Yeah, it's the one that would best carries a TV signal.
And the plenum, the plenum,
Plenum?
that was like that's fire retardant, like Ethernet cable, right?
Yes, it's fire retardant Ethernet cable. Yeah, and as I've said, the planet that I've seen generally, the colors look really pale. So, you know, it's kind of hard on the eyes to distinguish the different colors. All right, which of the following devices is most commonly used by a user to provide input to their workstation to launch a program or perform file manipulations? Excuse me.
Mouse.
Fairly simple on this one, right? A mouse?
Yeah, it'd be an input device, right?
Input device, yeah, input device, a monitor.
So
These other ones are,
Hmm.
yeah,
would a
They're
monitor
not
be
input
considered?
devices. They're output devices. A
yeah.
webcam does.
So input device would be a mouse and a keyboard. Output would be a webcam and a monitor. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, a monitor is definitely an output device. Is
a
a
webcam.
webcam an input or an
It
output?
takes input and broadcast. I get. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does take input in, right?
Yeah, I would say webcam is an input device.
But it's not the most commonly used.
Well, you're typically not using it for file manipulation. I mean,
Right.
Microsoft did on their Xbox, didn't they have that
Well, yeah.
thing where you could control through a
They
webcam?
did.
But
It never took
that's
off.
pretty uncommon.
It was really weird because it was a really good camera, but for some reason they didn't really provide any good software for it.
What was that system called? I can't remember.
The Connect.
Connect,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
Connect, yeah. So yeah, the webcam was used as an input device with Connect.
Hey, Suze, are you using a microphone with a filter?
Yeah.
Yeah, your audio is really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. You are working at a managed service provider for a large chain of doctors' offices. The company is opening a new office downtown. It needs 2 computers to be installed in the front desk to allow computers to self-check in their appointments and view their personal contact information. Which of the following type of computers would best meet the needs of the doctor's office?
Touchscreen kiosk.
A touchscreen kiosk, yeah. Yeah.
And a thin client.
I'm between thin client too.
Yeah,
Would that be considered a like a iPad? Would that be considered a thin client?
yeah, but the difference is, yeah, it could be that essentially, but the difference is a kiosk is going to only give them a guest. The applied thing with a kiosk is they're going to only have guest access to it. Where a thin client potentially they could have more access.
Right,
to
you
that.
only want to have them be able to access a certain application, and that's it.
Kiosks are usually in the lobby and thin clients are usually at workstations.
Yeah. All right, so I promised to show a little bit of DOS, so let's do that now.
Well, thanks for doing some of those review questions.
Sure. Okay, so let's add a new virtual machine. So I already downloaded it from the Google Drive. So I'm gonna go in here and click next. We're gonna leave the minimum amount of RAM. And we're going to use an existing virtual machine here.
Boss.
So I'm
Okay, so
going,
that's the difference uploading the
right,
ISO.
so, yeah,
Okay.
this one is not an ISO, this is a pre-made virtual machine. Normally, we're gonna do create a new hard drive. If we're gonna
Right.
do Windows 7, 8, 10, whatever, because we're using an ISO. But the DOS one is so small, we pre-created the virtual machine. So I'm gonna browse for it, and we're gonna click on the plus right here. And I put it in my downloads folder when I downloaded it. So I've got it right here. So I've got the virtual machine that I already downloaded. So I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna open it up. And I'm gonna choose that one. It's not attached at the moment, so I'm gonna attach it. And then I'm going to, I guess, create here, right? So it's powered off at the moment. So I'm gonna hit on the start button. And get it going. So it's pretty simple once you know how to do it. Okay, and so now we have DOS booted up.
Okay, so these were my questions.
Sure.
I still don't understand the difference between an internal command and an external command.
Let's see if anybody knows that. It's a good
I-
question.
So does DOS like Linux have a kernel?
Yes, it
And
does.
then
Yes,
it
it
does,
does. And
okay.
it has internal and external commands, just like Linux.
Okay, so it has a kernel. Okay, so
Yeah, it is the command.com in DOS that is the kernel.
the command.com is a kernel? Oh, I thought it was just
Actually, no, sorry, it is the
program, right?
It's the IO. It's the ms-dos.sys, I believe. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, ms-dos.sys.
Yeah.
So it's all files. It's so for example, the kernel itself is just a bunch of directories and files.
Well, they are they're internal. So when I do a dir, that's an internal in the memory. Now, when I do a command like xcopy, that is not internal in memory. So there's an important thing called the path. See that path says it tells the operating system to look in the root, in this case, and the DOS directory. If I get rid of that path and I run a command that's not internal, that command will give me an error because DOS won't know where to look for it.
Can you repeat that? You cut out before you said anything.
Okay. If I lose that path, if I no longer have that path anymore, and I use a command that is an external command like xcopy, the X stands for external. So the external copy or format, there's a lot of external commands. If I type that and it couldn't, well, there was no path, I'd get a bad command or file name message because that command is not in memory. Certain commands like dir and copy make
you mean in RAM? Or what do you mean by memory?
In the RAM. So if we do the mem command like here, right here, mem/c, these commands up here in the computer's memory. So in the computer's memory, there is the setver command, the high-mem command, the command.com, DOS key. So I've loaded those all into memory. So they come up instantly. So if I type those commands, they are stored in memory. Now,
so when the OS boots, these are already stored in the memory.
Yeah, and in the computer's RAM. Why can we not put every command into RAM?
Because it's temporary.
Yeah, because it's temporary. And the other reason?
Space.
There's not enough of it.
Space, yeah, we only have a finite amount of RAM. Typically, especially back in the DOS days, we had a very small amount of RAM.
How much? What was the total size of DOS?
The DOS could only access 1 meg of RAM. Only 1 meg. Yeah, Bill Gates famously said, I think something like 1 meg is all you'll ever need. and always gets kitted on it now. So,
Okay, so the only difference between an external and an internal command is the internal commands are loaded up at the moment of booting onto the RAM.
exactly. They're loaded up at
and
the
the
moment of
external
time you
commands
boot
need
the
to be
thing.
loaded in later.
Yeah.
That's considered firmware, Brian? It's something
No,
that's
no, actually not firmware. They're operating system. But
okay.
the external ones are more modular. So they load it into RAM when you need them. And then the minute you're done with them, they're flushed out of RAM. So that RAM is freed up again.
Right.
So that is the only difference.
Yes. And of course, the external commands will exist in the DOS directory. So this is where we'll find them. So that's basically most of them right there. So the move command, the print command, the format command, label command, all of these are external commands.
One last question. So
The attrib command we'll use a bit.
The root is not a kernel, right?
No, the root is not. The root is a starting point.
Okay.
We have roots in any operating system. You have a root in Linux, you have a root on your Mac, you have a root on DOS. The difference in the DOS and Windows operating systems, the other operating systems, is we can have more than one root in DOS and Windows. How can we have more than one root?
Dual boot?
Not by dual booting, although you want more than one root typically when you do a boot. It's by having another physical drive. So you have a C drive, a D drive, an E drive, right? They each have a root, and you have to change to a different drive letter to go to a different root. However, in Linux or Mac, there's only one root because they don't give a root. They don't use drive letters.
Okay. So another question was, here it says on this I printed it out. Usually, as for external DOS commands, it says usually do not need config.sys. Usually do not need autoexec.bat. Why is that? That they don't need these? Usually, but sometimes they do. Can you elaborate on that? I'm just confused.
Okay. All right. The autoexec.bat is where we set the path. So it can help with the external commands because it can path them and create a search path. The config.sys is typically used for loading drivers. So we don't need a driver to run an external command.
And you would edit those in Notebook or Editor, right?
Right. You can actually boot up your computer without a config.sys or an autoexec.bat. Neither of them are required to run your computer. So your external commands will run without either of those files. Now you will be missing the path. So if you do run an external command and it's in the DOS directory, then you have to
load
do
it.
something like change directory to the DOS directory to run, like I am here. So if I run xcopy or something like that, I'm in that directory now.
So the autoexec.bat is basically preloading the path, preloading the DOS directory in there for you, so you don't have to automatically do it.
Right. Remember, we use the autoexec.bat for two things. It can be used for more. Two primary things with path and prompt.
So okay, so I think I get it. So config.sys and autoexec.bat are programs
like a startup file
that load a path. The
autoexec.bat will load. What we've been using it for is to load path and prompt.
Okay, certain types of paths for external commands that require things like drivers and okay.
For the config.sys, we've been using it for loading drivers. So we use a device equals. That device equals is for loading a device driver. So we've been loading that. One of the common ones we've been loading is high mem. DOS actually needed a special memory manager in order to be able to access any, even though I said DOS can use 1 meg of RAM, well, actually, let me correct this. You know, I said it can use 1 meg. We can use a memory manager, which would allow it to use up to 16 meg. But it required a driver for that. And we had to load, the only way we can load that driver is by putting a statement in the config sys where device equals c:\/
So this config.sys and autoexec.bat, they'll automatically work. We don't need to touch them at all. If they're
The default ones are in there. So let's
The
see.
auto batch one you can touch. There's some things, the DOS key, right? That's
Yeah. So there
as long
you put in there.
there
but
is
they're
my,
already there and they're already
there's my
functioning.
default one right there, but I haven't loaded all.
DOS key is not in there. You would have to go in there and add that.
Okay, because
So
like
like
this
if you're gonna
right here.
if you're gonna run that driver, let's just say you run the driver, you don't need to like type in config.sys or type in autoexec.bat. You don't need to touch those. These files are already functioning as they should. You don't need to mess with them.
As long as you have no errors in your config sys. Yeah, the default one that when you install DOS should be fine until you want to add other functions. For example, if I had a sound card, I would have no sound card support right now at the moment because I don't have a driver for a sound card. If I had a DVD, a CD-ROM or DVD drive, I would need another device equals c:\/ or something like that driver in there to support the CD-ROM. So this was a primitive version before we had the device manager. This is like a config file in Linux. So this is a config file that we use for starting up the computer for loading necessary drivers.
Uploading the drivers.
Now this changes when we get into Windows. Windows uses something more complex. And what is that called? Anyone?
GUI.
The registry. The registry.
Oh, the registry, right.
Right, the registry. Well, it creates a GUI. Without a registry, we
Right,
would not have a
right.
GUI. Mhm. So in Windows, because this is just not complicated enough and not sophisticated enough, we have a registry that.
So the config system is like the registry, and auto exec in my mind is kind of like the startup file.
Yeah, but I would say they're both like the registry. The registry is made up of something like 9 different files, although we never typically look at them
Right.
because we use an editor to be able to view all of those files in one location, the registry
Gotcha.
editor. But they are a number of different files that actually make up the registry.
Gotcha.
Max, it looks like you went offline.
No, I'm still here.
Are
I'm
you
just
still there? Okay. All righty. So yeah, so the config sys is primarily for loading drivers. You can see the second line down there, device equals c:\/ with memory manager. So it actually needed a driver to access more than 1 meg of memory. Does anybody remember what setver did? What the function of that? It was, okay, if you don't remember, it was to make it compatible with programs that were written for earlier DOS versions. So the version of DOS, the last version that we're looking at here was MS-DOS version 6.22. So obviously there was a version 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that little driver there was for backward compatibility. Just like in Windows, we have something called compatibility mode, where if you have let's say a Windows 95 program and you're running Windows 10 and it has problem running, you can run it in a compatibility mode. So do we have any more questions? Let's take a look at the autoexec batches. Oops, did I must have spelled it wrong. But whenever I see that it's empty, it usually means I have a typo. Okay, so these are the instructions in the autoexec.bat. First one, it's loading a smart drive program in there, and that would be used for caching the hard drive. What is the second line down? Echo off.
So it doesn't display that.
Yeah, so it
But
doesn't display.
whatever you have above that echo off, it won't display all that drive loading information.
Right. So yeah. So if you're running any kind of script, then we may not want it to show up on the screen. So when we're running a batch file, we're running a script here, and so we can choose that it doesn't display on the screen. And the @ sign before the echo off says don't even display the echo off command. So if you want to selectively have commands not displayed, you can put the @ sign in front of it. Or as we've done here, you can put the echo off and everything after it doesn't display on the screen. Now, if so further down you wanted things to display, you can also do an echo on to turn it back on again.
You can just delete that line and it'll just
Mhm.
display everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sometimes for troubleshooting, you may want to have them display until you troubleshoot whatever problem you had. So as we said, for the auto exec bat, the primary things we're doing here is setting a prompt. So after the prompt, we have these what's called metastring characters, $P, $G. There's also other ones, $T for time, $D for date. You can display a lot of different things in the prompt, but this is a fairly standard one. The $P is really nice. What does $P do?
Semicolons or
What's P for? P for the path. So when I change to the DOS directory, the prompt gets longer, includes the word DOS, which is really handy because now I know which directory I'm in. And the $G at the end just means the greater than sign, just makes a little something look like an arrow, kind of make it look like an arrow at the end.
there's a YouTube video that shows you like all the different prompt commands.
As there, yeah, you can
like
you can make
dollar,
flash,
like,
you
yeah.
can make color ones, you can make them flash and different things like that if you really.
It's just basically the like where it's like where it displays the C, it'll change that.
Yeah. So the next one down, as we said, is the prompt at the path. The path at the moment is pretty short. You're just telling the operating system to search the root directory and the DOS directory. If you had other programs in there, you may want to have them search those as well. We haven't talked about the next one, the temp folder. This is used for programmers. If programmers have something where they need a temporary workspace for some of their programs just to be stored temporarily, you're setting a variable here. So if in their code they say sometime, save something to temp. Well, where is temp? Temp, you wouldn't know where temp was, except you define it here to say temp is the DOS directory. But you could define temp as anything. You could make a folder called temp and say temp equals :/temp. So you're just making a place to store files. And this happens especially a lot in Windows. If you ever open up a Word document, Excel or something like that, what happens is Word or Excel will open up a temporary file as well, called a temporary workspace, that it needs to keep track of any changes so that when you close the file, it will write them back to your Word or Excel document. Last one we talked about here was last one mentioned here is the DOS key, which is in the AutoExec BAT, you can load different programs. So let's say every time I wanted to start up my DOS computer, I wanted a certain game to run all the time. I could have put the executable for that game down there, or I wanted to open up, version of Word or something like that. I could have put that down there. So that's where you can automatically launch things, just like the startup folder in Windows, where you can put something in the startup folder and have
Or
it.
if you wanted to launch Windows Vista.
Yeah, you want to launch Windows Vista in a virtual, let's say.
Right.
Yeah, you want to actually run it completely. so we could spin it down when we're done with it. Okay, so Max, are you still there? So Max, do you have any more questions at the moment that we need to clarify?
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it.
Sure.
Here it says all that an executable, an external DOS commands, it has something here that says all require that an executable file by that name with exe dot. So
Yeah, so we kind of looked at it a moment ago, so let's do that. Go into the DOS directory and let's take a look at all the executable files. So I'm going to look at them all by typing dir, and I'm going to use a filter, *.exe. So what that does is it allows me to look at all the files that end in exe in the DOS directory. And I'm going to put a /p at the end to pause it. So those are our external commands right there. So I think the one I used a little while ago was mem. So an external command to look at the amount of memory. We talked a little bit about xcopy. We'll have you do format. The trip command, the one at the beginning, we'll use that one. So we will use deltree, we'll use that one as well. So we will be using some of those scan disk. So we will be using some of those external DOS commands.
Check disk.
And those commands are just too big to be in memory. They would take up quite a bit of space.
what does it mean by require? All require.
Require what?
These files all require that an executable file by that name with exe dot or com dot bat extensions. So I'm just confused by the wording.
Yeah. So yeah, there are only 3 types of files that will execute in a DOS. Does anybody know the 3?
Is it exe, com, and bat?
Yeah, exe, com, and batch. So
I think I understand my question. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. All right.
So does that mean that the commands themselves require these files in some way?
Yes, they do. In fact, if we look at here, if I want to do the trib, look at the very top, the trib command. But I would type a trib dot, I would just type a trib. I don't have to type the extension on them. So whenever you're running a exe, a bat, or a com file, you can just type the first part of it. You don't have to type the .exe or the .bat.
It's implicit. Okay, so these external commands are executable files. They are com files. They are batch files.
Correct.
I see.
Yeah. So was that straightforward with everybody? We know by now when you're running an executable, you don't have to type the .exe part of it. Yes. However, if you're going to copy the file, you do have to specify the full name. So if I wanted to make a copy of a trib.exe, I would have to put in my copy statement, copy space a trib.exe to wherever I wanted to copy it to. I'd have to give the full name then. But when you're running it, it knows to look for it knows you're talking about an exe bat or com file. Okay. So anything else, Max?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. So we're going to stop for lunch unless there are any other questions. And be sure to come in tomorrow afternoon. If you can.
Yes. So is this the end, or are we just taking a break, or is this the end?
This is the end, Max. So when can you come in, Max, to class?
Not until next week, I don't think.
Okay. All righty. Well, Max, if you want to call me later after lunch, you can. If you have any questions, okay, we can talk.
I will. Thank you. Well, I don't know, but yes, thank you anyway.
If you do, otherwise, Rafa will be on Thursday. And if you do want to do a one-on-one Zoom meeting as well, let me know. Okay. All right. So
thank you guys, Mike.
Okay, so we're gonna say bye for now, and we'll see anybody that's coming in tomorrow. We'll see you then. Otherwise, see you on Thursday. Okay.
Goodbye, everyone.
Okay. All right.
Later.
Talk to you later.